Welcome to the Graphics Sales Stories podcast. This episode
Thanks, Tom.
You're welcome, Peter. This episode is on the trade show. If you haven't read this comic yet, it's linked below. Here's a quick reminder. We'll come back to this later because we like to talk about the art at the end. So, Peter, I believe you hate trade shows.
I do not like them. So back in the day, we had to sign up. Like, what shift do you want at the trade show? And I used to hate. I'm like, I'm going to this trade show, and I'm not going to get my target account profile people that I want to sell to. I'm going to get people who are either competitors or just want to, they're in the industry. Not too many, prospects coming in, and if they were prospects, they weren't really a fit for what we were doing. So I looked at it as a waste of time. So I used to not like it, but it had to be cheery. Had to put that suit and tie on and greet everybody and do the job. And because they did go back to the office, they counted cards. How many cards did you get in the fishbowl? Whoever got the most cards on their shift, got a prize or whatever. But it never worked out from a business standpoint. And I didn't care about all this stuff. I just cared about my commission check. I'm like, great. I won a prize amount. Most business cards. It did not pay off at the end of the month of my commission check. So I just didn't like them. I didn't find them. But I know that you've actually when we talked about this before, you've given some good tips on the questions you ask. This is before the internet. Basically, I was doing this stuff, and so, I was on my own, and there was nothing like. Basically, the only way to get names wasn't because they did electronic sign up or something. It was business cards. That's the only way, and you just had to go and collect the business cards.
Yeah, business cards are better if you can still get one, right? You get all the contact information versus the badge scan. So actually, I still bring business cards and volunteer them first, because when you do that, then people tend to reciprocate. So if they have one, they give it back, and now you got the cell phone number. And
that's a good idea, because then I can make up my own stuff and put my own different wrong phone numbers on it and make up my different counts. That'd be great.
You are such a skeptic. So we jumped right into the serious aspect of that with that, Peter. But so I do want to I address that, because I see the same problem. I learned from Steve Richard a long time ago. Got to credit Steve with this, because I thought it was kind of brilliant, that there's 3 questions if you're working a booth that you want to ask right out of the gate, because you don't know if you're talking to a prospect, but most salespeople make the mistake that someone walks up and they get asked a question, and now they're just pitching to random strangers. So the 3 questions, one is, what's your business? I love this question because it's kind of vague, right? But when we're cold calling or we're prospecting from the office, we know who we're calling. We know they're our ideal customer profile. If they come to the booth, we don't know it. They could be a competitor, like you said. They could be.
I'm sorry. Again, being the skeptic, I'm sorry. I'm ruining your train of thought. But it gets running through my head, so I have to say it. He comes by, what's your business? None ya.
None your business.
None your business.
Well, we got an interesting piece.
So how do you handle that rejection, Tom?
Idiot says what?
Hello.
So yeah, I don't know how I'd handle that. Most people, actually, I find at trade shows are a little bit easier to deal with than the Peter Clearys of the world.
It's probably true. It's probably
I'm not telling you. It's none of your business. Really? You came to this trade show? You can walk up to my booth?
Just give me this squishy ball. Just give me this squishy ball and this Reese's peanut butter cup.
I just want a bunch of tchotchkes. Yeah. Oh my God. We should talk about the types of people at trade shows like that too. But let me just
come in and get the big bag. They used to come in and get the bag, and they're just collecting. Anyway, go ahead. Yes, finish your thought.
Yeah, would you call the collector? Just kind of like lugging around, got 3 backpacks on, all full of tchotchkes.
I got 8 kids at home. They want toys.
They all need feeding. I still have my favorite trade show tchotchkes. There's just I have 3 of them. Yeah. So yeah, what do that's your qualifying question. What's your business? And then if they're not, they're a student, right? They're a competitor. It's like, oh, okay, we'll see you later now. Let them go. And then I think the next question is, what brought you here? that kind of gets them talking about like, well, we got this challenge. And so now we got the customer in discovery, Peter, right? Discovery. We want to do discovery first before we pitch them, right?
Exactly. And what is your business problem?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's essential, right? So let's come back to that in a minute, though. What's your worst trade show experience? Can you remember one?
I was asked to go when we first created the sales effectiveness team, and I was asked to so we were just building it at the company, and I was asked to go to probably the first sales effectiveness convention. So it was specific to sales convention, and people really didn't understand. Like everybody's idea of what the effectiveness team, because it was relatively new idea or being real, it was really just now exploding, and people were recognizing the need for it. But what people thought it was completely different. And so you have people pushing like, hey, sales effectiveness is the training arm of this. So the sales effectiveness is, so there's so many different components. So basically when I sat there, I went to the convention and I'm talking to people like, nobody has a really idea. Like it didn't fit what I was trying to do at my company. So that was the worst part, because I talked to all these people like, this is, again, complete waste of time because it's all over the map. The good lesson I learned when I came back is like, yeah, I don't think anybody really has an understanding of what the effectiveness should do. And then I kind of turned in like, I just need to focus on what my companies do. But that from my convention standpoint, I'm like, it's a weekend away from my family, or a couple of days. I think we went to a Thursday, Friday, and came home on Saturday because I think it was in California. I'm like, I shouldn't have gone to that. That was a waste of my
time. I can't. How many trade shows do you think you've gone to in your lifetime?
Not many, I would say, because I stopped going. Like when I was in sales, when they were in Boston, you used to have to sign up and go to them. So they'd have conventions at the Heinz Convention Center. And so we'd go. I think as I started getting a little bit better in my sales, I could convince my leadership I want to go. Send the new people. Send the new people to go. I'm not signing up for it. It's a waste of my time. So I probably only been to maybe 10 in my like where I had to work, or yeah, I was probably maybe only 10. Okay. Probably less.
Oh my goodness, I've been to hundreds of trade shows, conferences, events. I was a marketing guy before I was in sales, and I used to like run the trade show aspect of our marketing with a great team. So one time, Peter, I went to Mandalay Bay in Vegas for back-to-back trade shows. I was literally in the Mandalay Bay for 10 days straight, 2 conferences. On the 5th day, I realized I had not left the property. I was either in the Mandalay Bay Convention Center, the casino, my room, or a restaurant. And you know how many windows there are in casinos. So I hadn't seen sunlight in 5 days. I was like, oh my God, I got to get out of here, right?
Well, with your skin, Tom, you shouldn't be out in that Vegas sun.
Yeah, it was probably good for that reason. But yeah, man, insane. But the second show, and we went to this every year, was one of my favorite shows because it was Exhibitor Magazine's trade show. So it was an exhibitor trade show for exhibitors. So they were like movie sets. So it was these companies that built, a lot of them built trade shows. We built the tech to support like lead capture at trade shows back then. So we were there for that reason. But there were these like amazing exhibits, everything but fireworks, lights and like moving parts. It was incredible. So that was my favorite show to go to every year.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, some of these shows are huge and great. And we kind of joke about it. We'll talk about it later. But I love seeing the videos of CES. Like if I could go to something that huge and that big, and obviously Salesforce.com stuff. But from a business, that's more of like that would entertain me. But from a work standpoint, I'm like, and let's go back to that. You know the numbers here. Is it viable to have these convention, to have a space at a convention center and sell your wares? The numbers pay off for expending that much money at these things? Or is it from a marketing standpoint, just a brand awareness?
Well, I think it depends, right? It depends on the company, but more companies that are going there to collect leads. Like, so CES has a lot of consumer brands, right? So a lot of that's just, you're looking for PR, you're looking for momentum coming out of that. But for B2B, like more companies need to do the math. you can actually calculate how many, you know, attendees there are going to be, what percentage are likely to be. You should be there only if there's a, you know, your ICP, but what percentage
Yeah.
are likely to come by your booth. I've done the math actually for a few clients, and tried to teach the reps, like, you need to have this many conversations in a day, and you assume that, you know, let's target 50% of those conversations are with potential customers. How many of those you convert to? So we did sort of the cold calling prospecting math, mostly because marketing in these companies would say, hey, we need like, you know, 40 MQLs from this to pay for it. They
What's
had
an
some kind
MQL?
of marketing qualified lead.
Okay.
So we needed like a certain, like we needed to talk to this many ICP and so forth. So there is a funnel and math you can do. I would use it because I would be working with the sales team and to create urgency. It's like, you know, you need to have this many conversations to make this many
Yeah.
meetings. And by the way, this will help you make your quarter.
So
It's
would
not
you say
there
that?
for fun. You know, you have to
Yeah.
work.
Would you spend the end of the year revisiting and saying, "Don't go to these conventions anymore. Like it's not worth it." So,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, you spend a lot because you know, if you're not getting those, if you're just getting it or you know under, then what's the point of spending the money? And
Yeah.
would people fight you back on it and say, well, there's other reasons? And so this is a big thing you see at conventions. And a couple I went to is like before the convention, set up meetings with people going to be there. So
Mhm.
you're basically just it's a convenience thing, and I think it's self-filling, but like people go because there's meeting with 5 different vendors and be able to do that, get the pitches and in discussions in one place, so it's easier and convenient for people. So I'm like, I don't need to have a booth for that. Just go there and set up meetings all day. Because people are going to be there, but they're there to go see to have the meetings with
Yeah.
people they've already preset with. So I found that interesting. I'm like, okay, well, why don't we just decide like, hey, everybody's going to be in Vegas. Let's just go there. We call it a convention, but we're just going to have individual, sales meetings.
Yeah. And
So I
we've literally done that in my tenure, at least a dozen times with companies I worked for or worked with. They're like, we can't afford a booth, but everyone's going to be there. We're going to get a suite at the, and they're going to be there. And we're going to invite everybody into the suite later and give them, you know, free drinks or whatever. So, or we're going to have dinner with those people. So yeah, a lot of people do exactly that.
yeah, interesting. Now it just reminded me of a story. I'm going to tell you the story. So we're um, a partner of ours. I'm not going to use any names. A partner of ours, the rep was like, we will pay for an open bar for you guys to host. So it'd be like, hey, it's a Broadwing offering an open bar sponsored by this company.
Mm-hmm.
So and we tout it and everything. Everybody comes there. It's fantastic. The guy, the rep who was representing in picking up the tab, got wasted, left, and my president had to pick up the bill and pay the whole thing. And that guy never stepped a foot into the company again to sell that sales rep. Like it was just, it got ironed out later, but the president was just not happy with
Oh my
the way
God.
that ended up.
Whoops. A bit of a mistake.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, so you had the first two. You haven't hit the third one. What was the third question?
So the third question, which I think is kind of like an alternate, depending on how it's going,
Yeah.
is what speaker, you know, or topic have you found useful and why? What that kind of gets is it keeps the conversation going, but it shows you like where their interests are. So if you really think you need to qualify, you're not getting anywhere or you got somewhere, but you want to go a little deeper, that'll start helping you connect with somebody on like what
Yeah.
their interests are.
Again, skeptic, you asked me a question like, what is this, a quiz? What are you going to tell my boss? You going to say like, hey, is that going to see some speakers?
Speakers, there's speakers here. What do you mean?
I wasn't listening. I was a
Excuse
nap.
me. It looks like you work with this gentleman. He hasn't seen
Yeah.
any
I
speakers.
was at the casino till 4 a.m. I had to go. It was a dark room. I wanted to sleep.
Let's go back to the the numbers game of this thing too, which is not all the intent of a trade show. But I was reading this post and I remembered it. I looked it up again this morning. Some Zach Selch, who he's basically a consultant, works to bring people globally. Like he's specialist in markets all over the world. but he wrote this great post on the value of your partners at an event, and he does the math for
You
you.
want my wife? Want my wife to come there? What are you saying?
Okay, resellers, your resellers.
Oh, oh,
Right. And he does the math for you in the post. I'll link it below, but the is really like interesting how he's like, you're trying to maximize your ability to connect with your prospects. So if you have channel partners and they
yeah,
have a presence there, don't neglect that, right? Work through them for them to set up meetings for you, and you can maximize. It's kind of like what you're saying before, everyone's going to be there. So instead of you just trying to book meetings, if you got a partner, your partner
yeah,
like you can host a room within your partner's booth instead, or you
right.
can do that in addition. You can ask them to set meetings. And so you got to work it. It kind of goes back to the point you made earlier, Peter. It's that you got to book meetings ahead of time too.
Yeah,
If you do the math, it's like you got to try to book meetings ahead of that for the show. When you're
yeah.
there, you gotta, and I do want to talk about like what the comic covers, which is just the fundamentals at a trade show that
What? Yeah.
kill it.
So we'll stick to the numbers before. Then we'll jump to it right after this. But what? How much money are we talking about? Like, so you've run marketing. So what was your most successful convention? Like, hey, we walked out of there, and after doing all the numbers and 3 months post and seeing the appointments that might have come from it, or the customers we met there, do you have like something that you came back with some rough numbers and said, this was very successful. Us, we were able to close $3 million worth of business.
So that's a good question. I'm trying to remember back to when I specifically ran these events. Some I would say, couldn't track anything, didn't know anything. So there were some that were, like you said, like we had no idea. I mean, early in my career, we ran some shows and, I don't know that we tracked a whole lot, but trying to think about some that like came away with, I don't know, a dozen leads and like 50,000, 100,000 in pipeline. The show costs like maybe, you know, 20,000 to be at. I mean, there were some that definitely in pipeline, that was attributed. The lead source was the event. I mean, yeah, significant like ROI. Some were, so I was at one company, Peter, that made video glasses. It was like a consumer product.
I think I
And
remember that. Is that what's like? Yeah, I think I remember that.
yeah,
It's
as
like the
early as
first VR thing.
2009.
Like you could watch it like a movie theater, but in your glasses. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, it was like well before some of our engineers ended up at Google Glass, but it was a really cool product. And so we couldn't quite afford to be at CES,
Yeah,
but somebody the year before I joined there had got a spot like in the hallway back to like I don't know, out of I can't remember it, but it was like it was cheap. I think it was like $5,000 or $10,000 for the space when, hall space was like 20 or 25 or something, but everybody had to file out and go by. And we had this corner spot and the traffic was insane. And this was like a product that was just trying to build a presence at the time, right? And get off the ground. So that was, I would say, looked at for PR and momentum. We
yeah,
ended up on TV and like we just got an amazing amount of PR from that, which eventually led to sales. So that was judged another way. Like, hey, it was a branding, really a PR, a branding
yeah,
event. So I've looked at, I've gone to shows and looked at it like 12 different ways. Now I'm doing a lot more B2B or mostly B2B consulting. So it is much more the numbers, how many
yeah,
meetings, how many leads and things like that. But I've been involved in all different types of,
yeah.
event
It's
marketing.
funny. It's the CES now. I look at it. I'm like, think that the shows that they're putting on to show that they're what they're making, and it seems like it's just a bid to go viral, right? It's not the convention. It is now a platform where they can get visibility to try to go viral with their stuff and
Yeah.
all, so
Some,
but
so in that line, there's some mistakes I've seen, like big brands, they might disagree with me with this, but I've seen big brands, they announce something at CES, right? That is not going to be for sale for 6 to 12 months. And okay, but like the momentum that comes out of CES is, it peaks. So if you announce something and the product's on the shelves within 2 weeks, right, you can really take advantage of that. The sort of drop where it's like, oh, people go looking for it 2 to 4 weeks. It's on TV. All this stuff comes out, and then you can't buy it anywhere, and then you got to start that up again. I don't know. That seems insane to me. That's like a poor
I think
investment.
that's just more of the branding, like we're cutting edge. This is stuff we're working on. When I hear that, and I'm like, that's great. You're just trying to explain to me how, what you're working on, that you're really smart. And you get some really crazy things in a funnel, wait for it.
Like a concept car.
I mean, yeah. Tesla did a lot of that right here. Elon Musk is like, hey, this is what we're working on. It's gonna be ready for you in 5 years. You're gonna love it. So the colors, I think you said before, the colors, Eli is just from the graphic artist. The colors are pretty cool. Does pop.
Yeah, I think visually, just like when this hit my inbox and I'm looking at it, I'm like, wow, just there's a lot of subtleties that I think are missed that show the quality of Eli's work and true artist work. And that, I think, is the color is amazing. And then also in the second, let's see if we can zoom in and come back to that here. So like the symmetry, right? Notice this guy's finger here, and then my finger, here. That's intentional, trying to draw your eye in. He's got my finger kind of pushing on the bubble. Like all these little subtleties and symmetry, they just make the whole thing like I think beautiful to look at and effective.
We'll go back to that. Go back to that, because you do have to zoom into a lot of things that he does. Like he's got the guy with the finger up. He's got the scruff, right? So he's got a little bit of scruff on him.
Mm-hmm.
Just there's so like a lot of things you got to zoom in to kind of appreciate the depth that is going on here. So
yeah, absolutely. Let's go back to, by the way, I think we're looking pretty fit and trim here. Don't you think?
Yeah.
Peter?
Yeah. It's a 22-year-old me.
Do you notice what's on your badge, Retep?
Yes, I did notice that.
There's a little callback. There's subtleties, right? The CES sign.
Yes, right. Well, I also like if you go back to that, it's on the door, right? So you get zooming in, so he's got the whole thing on the door again, and just in the background, and it's pretty cool.
Just amazing. Just amazing. Yeah. Thank you, Eli. There's some, I think one of the things that's different about this comic is there's some layers, right? I think you have to think a little bit more about what's going on. And I want to talk about the lessons.
You have to have been there. You have to have been there to understand this is what happens at conventions.
Yeah. And let's talk about that for a sec. Let's back up. So the point of this comic, right, is the fundamentals, right? So at trade shows, this kind of drives me crazy. I can be really like, I ran a lot of trade shows. I ran a lot of teams, and I coach and train a lot on it now. And I'm kind of, I don't want to say a jerk, but I'm militant about it because like you said, the numbers matter. So the fundamental, the blocking and tackling of a trade show is that when you're in the booth, you want to face out, you want to look inviting, smiling, because those people walking by, if you do the math and the numbers, your buyers, if you're not looking out towards them and they don't feel like they're welcome, are going to pass you right by. And you've got a limited number of people that are going by. And how many times, again, this is what they show, this comic, we had a dozen examples and we narrowed it down to just one, which was the worst, that people are looking at their cell phones, they're talking to each other, or they're like drinking coffee. They're just distracted. So that where I was militant is I'd say, look, no cell phones in the booth.
Yeah. If you don't look like you want to be here, they don't want to be here.
Right. You don't look like you want to be here. They don't want to be here. Yeah, that's spot on. Yeah. And you can't be like, you scan badges with phones now and apps and things. But outside of that, I'm like, look, no laptops, no phones, no drinks, right? If you need a break, which you do, then take a break, go to the coffee bar, try to strike up a conversation there. There's another opportunity, by the way, is that the coffee bar is a great place to talk to people, but do that outside the booth. Look like you want to be there. What were some of the other examples, Peter, that we scrapped from the comic? One was the booth with a bunch of boxes, right? The guy that doesn't show up in time to set up his booth. I've seen that like how many times?
It was also like the boxes there because they didn't get the right parts. Like some of the stuff is missing, so they can't put up all of the stuff.
Oh God.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the people who had the worst tchotchkes. Like, hey, listen, I don't want I don't want a peppermint. Give me something that my kid could play with. No, but yeah, it was the boxes. Not talking, and then like even with the booth set up, just people aren't there. Right? They're walking around someplace else or at the coffee bar or whatever, but they're just like this is an empty booth. I've seen that so many times.
Yeah. And don't pitch them. Like going back to that point we made, that as someone's walking by and they're like, "Hey, what do you guys sell?" Right? Stop. Ask them what their business is, what brought them there, because you might be pitching to someone that's a competitor or a student, right? Like ask a couple of questions, involve them, figure it's just like a discovery meeting or a call. Figure
Yeah.
out who they are, what they're trying to accomplish. Then you can tailor your pitch to them instead of just, massive amounts of demos to people that maybe don't matter. And you only have so much time in the day. So if you're talking to the wrong person, you burn 20 minutes and 5 more prospects that could have been worth your time just walked by. So it takes a lot of discipline. Sorry, I get amped up about this because I'm like, it's so expensive and it's draining to go to these shows. Oh, and don't don't drink too much the night before.
Well, it's a business thing. You should, yeah, definitely not. I know there's a lot of things going on. That actually, that's a key for anything, not just good conventions. And it used to drive me crazy when I managed teams. I'm like, we're here for work. Yeah, have a little bit of fun. Control yourself. Go to bed. If you can't control yourself, then avoid it. Anyway, that's a hot button for me. Is
oh my goodness, dude.
You wake up. This is a job. You're here for a job. We're paying for all this stuff. Relax, have fun, but don't overindulge.
Yeah, I worked with a guy that perennially like overindulged. Missed the shuttle bus, right? Lost iPhones. Had to go to the iPhone store. Lost another iPhone. Like it was a problem there. Like it's expensive.
You and I are in another podcast that we were talking about. Those things going place. And I was talking about, I think, a couple presidents clubs or sales kickoffs, and I think almost every single one of them, somebody gets let go. Somebody just can't control themselves. So I've just seen it too many times that it just bothers me. But anyway, back to the convention. So now you're sober. You're not sober. You're paying attention.
You're looking at the people walking by. You're warm and friendly. Yeah, that's just the basics too, and be there, for that conversation. It's not that hard.
Yeah,
not that hard.
I won't go into too much more, but I know about the couple that I went to, because again, I didn't find them useful. I used to have, don't do this, but we'd have games. Like, what could you say to this guy? How do you say, like, so what could you say something in a conversation or whatever? But I remember one of the things I used to have to the other booth guys, I'm like, if I say to the person, more on this later, that's me actually calling this guy a moron, and please try to get me out of this conversation.
You had a code word?
I'd always go like, oh, well, we'll do that more on this later. And then I'd kind of keep on talking. And that was a code, like the booth buddies, like, get me out of this conversation.
That's actually a pretty good tactic, because I get asked a lot. Like when I'm training on this, they will say like, what happens when I get in conversation with somebody that I know is not our buyer? How do I get out of it? I'm like, well, you politely want to exit, but that's actually a decent strategy, right? Like a code word, someone else can now, hey, Peter, we need you to look at this, like politely interrupt that conversation.
Yeah. Yep. I just like to suddenly call the guy moron, but that was but yes, get me out of this. Please get me out of this.
Like to insult people. Yeah, that's good.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Don't do that, people. Don't insult people. Come up with a different code word.
Yeah, code word that doesn't insult potential customers. Yeah, that's good policy.
Yes. But back to the artwork. I think there's a couple things to look at. And by the way, Tom and I, we were talking earlier, but the tchotchkes are pretty funny. Like people like just having this. Everybody has the squishy balls, right? Everybody has the candy sitting in front. You get pens. So you just, but you do see these people carrying around bags and just collecting different things as they're going through. Did you ever, because you see this all the time, like especially when iPads first came out. Hey, sign up, and there'll be a raffle for an iPad. Did you ever do any of those? And was that worthwhile? Did you get, because people just throwing their name in there, right? It's just they want the prize. They don't care about your business.
So I think somewhat embarrassingly, yes, I've tried everything. I mean, I've done trade shows for 25 years now, when I knew nothing to now where I know a little more than nothing. But yes, and I think it's not a good idea. Also, yeah, because you're collecting from anybody, right?
Right.
And sure, I guess you build your list a little bit, but how unqualified is that list, right? And do we want qualified leads or not qualified? So I guess there's an argument for like, hey, we got more people to sign up. But and that's, one of the things, if you're going to a trade show, right, we send a lot of marketing people that are untrained, and we don't sometimes send salespeople, like the marketing people put it on, but it's a sales conversation, right? So you need to train your marketers, because they're either going to do things like scan the badge when someone's walking by, just collect those business cards, right? We have to start with the qualifying conversation first. It's rude, frankly. Someone walks by and say, "Hey, can I scan your badge?" Like, how about we talk about things first? So all those that's another, like, just poorly executed thing that people do. Someone walk by, is like, "Hey, can I scan your badge?" or throw your business card in for a chance to win. I'm like, that. No, that's
They're just count up, right? They're just trying to get the count up of people they talk to or whatever, rather than I'd rather have, and I tell you used to tell the sales team all the time, I'm like, I'd rather you go on 4 qualified meetings a week than 15. Like, it's just go on, get the qualified information, because it's worth the gold, versus trying to mine through the crap they have there. So I'm related, like what's good, what's bad, and quite frankly, I think that's why there's a lot of failure, especially in the days when we didn't have all the electronics to tell us, like, hey, we can take the person's name, match it up against the company, tell me how many people work there, whole stuff. Before, just a card, I'm like, hey, I recognize this name, or you give them a call, and you're fishing through all this stuff, and you call like, oh, you're an HR, that has nothing. You're not the right person, right? You don't know who to contact, and so that's why people like, I got leads, but they weren't the Glengarry leads. They were just horrible leads. So I wouldn't follow up with them, because I'm like, I know history's told me this is all rubbish.
Yeah. You have to be super disciplined, I think, to make a trade show really worthwhile. So you need to train people. You need to have pre-event outreach. You need to have all the blocking and tackling. No phones, no drinks, face out. Don't pair up when you're at a booth if you can avoid it, unless like you have a rookie. Like, trade shows are a good place for younger employees, younger to the company employees, to learn to have firsthand conversations. So in that context, you might pair them up with a veteran as a tag along. But generally, if you've got people manning a booth, you won't, don't pair up, because you end up talking to each other and getting distracted by that person's walking by. You're not inviting them in. So if you're standing alone, someone's walking by, now, you can start that conversation up, and then teach them the questions to ask, and to do, immediate follow-up. Like, when you take a break or you go up to your room, no one likes to do this, right? But if you had a good conversation and you send them a LinkedIn or an email following that conversation that evening, and you recap what your discussion is, a couple of real nice benefits of that is you get into their inbox that day, right? So, and you're reminding them who you are. So when you follow up a week from that, you can use a thread. You can follow up to that email. So you created context. You're also going to get their out of office bounce back, which will have alternate contacts, right? Like, hey, I'm out of the office. You can talk to Peter, while I'm not there. Now you get an alternate contact. So all that takes an self-discipline, right?
Right.
You
and I think all of this, all of this, and what you're talking about, I think is important, which is prep. Again, the handful they went to was always like, sign up for the day and go, and that was a prep. And there was no, the follow-up was like, hey, marketing gave you a bunch of leads, where are they? I'm like, well, and it's to your point, I'm like, nobody really talked about what's our messaging here. What should we be talking about? Is there product set that you wanted us to be pitching here? What a lot of times we just showed up at the high convention saying there's a convention here. I don't know what it's for. but we have a booth there, so I'll be just doing my normal sales pitch. So the preparation and the follow up and stuff, I think probably just because that when I went, it wasn't really that we wasn't managed that well for whatever reason. I'm sure people do a great job with it, but for me, the experience I had because of the companies I was with, I'm like, it was a waste of time because it wasn't prepared.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. Sales and marketing, the bigger the company, usually the chasm, right? They become very separate. And usually marketing is sponsoring, running an event, but sales is often attending. And sales has a rhythm every day. Like I think on the last podcast, you're like, hey, every day I know when I make this amount of calls, I do this. Like you have a rhythm. That methodology of like, hey, people are walking by the booth. We need a different rhythm, but we need one and we need to measure it. And when marketing is running an event, they don't often understand that aspect. They're like, oh, we're going to set it up. They'll go look like boo, scan badge, right? So the integration between sales and marketing is never more important than an event because it's massively disruptive, right? You're leaving, you're going on the road. It's massively expensive, right? And if you don't have that discipline between the two departments, and then when the leads come back, et cetera, all that follow up, you really are wasting a lot of money. But that's a lot of discipline between two departments that often don't work great in normal circumstances together.
Our field in marketing,
Did you say you failed in marketing?
No, our field marketing, I probably did. I probably did. Our field marketing team used to call me up so when I was running the New England region, hey, we're gonna do this. Here's what we plan on doing. Like we're gonna do an event where we bring customers to a Red Sox game. We're gonna have a convention coming in, so they had to play all year planned. And I'd constantly, it was a battle. We got along well, but I'm like, I would like you to put the money elsewhere. Don't do that. What I'd rather do is host an open bar in this area of Boston where I can invite State Street and Fidelity and all these people and just get and have a conversation with the people I know. So I'll invite these people and I found success there. But I was constantly like, I don't want to do these. I don't want to take the money from the convention, take the money from taking customers out to a Bruins game or Red Sox game. I don't want to do that. Let's put the money someplace else and do different things. And then when I went over, when it became the director of the New England, the Northeast, and they brought another manager, and he was all about like, let's go on golf trips, let's go to see the Red Sox. I'm like, yeah, you're just boondangling it. It's just where's the the effort? Where's the money coming in, the revenue coming in from those events that you're spending this money in? And so that's like, I'll go back to my original statement. I'm not a big fan.
You're definitely not a big fan, but we've been pretty hard on events and trade shows, but let's talk about just for a minute some of the positives, right? A lot of people in one place, right? If you want to build that relationship, and all of these people are in one place at one time, whether existing customers or new prospects, having a cup of coffee, a drink, a conversation in the booth, going out to a game together. I mean, that does build a relationship. You want to make sure it's with, the right people and that it has an outcome, of course, but there is a huge benefit to that. And I think the other benefit is for learning an industry, right? Going to a show and having, a cold caller that's having 2-minute conversations all day is going to learn a limited amount, where they go to a trade show and actually can have more lengthy conversations. They learn twice, 3 times as fast as they would just sitting in the office. So I think there are some really nice benefits to events too. And definitely I've proven ROI in certain
I wouldn't shun them but the points you make are valid, right? If you're preparing for it and you're spending, you're putting as much effort into it as you are financially, but the ROI to me is always, and again, the way it was run, the way I looked at it, I'm like, I could see a different ROI that I would like in my region. But again, I see there's a lot of success. The company I'm at now, Akamai, I think has tremendous. I think there's a multiple different things they're doing, right? So it's the brand awareness, especially when they go to security shows, right? So that's big for us. So now the compute stuff, and so it's the brand awareness, and we're in this marketplace, so we are, a big player in this. It is having those preset meetings, right? So they're having some really good conversations with their partners, and then I think less than and then it's finding opportunities, right? So I've always looked at it as the main thing was to finding the opportunities. I'm like, I'm not finding opportunities here. So if you're kind of putting everything together, I can see the benefit. But the way I experienced it was my job to go get, to find opportunities from from being there. And if that's the main thing, I'm like, I don't think it's worth it.
Well, you asked me, you asked me earlier, and you just said it wasn't worth it. If I had any examples, and I finally remember, but I did it. I did have a client that their trade show season was in January, and there was a couple months in the year. They were by far the most productive form of leads. For pre-outreach, they were very disciplined about reaching out before using it. Sometimes you can use like, hey, you going to that show, even though they're not, as a good opener, but they got the bulk of their opportunities and leads. We got better at cold calling with that team, so it started to surpass that, but it was very productive for them. And I think what it comes down to, it's like we've talked before about sort of a top-down thing, is that it's good leadership, but it is proper investment in doing it right. If I could give any piece of advice to any company, is that events are tremendously disruptive, expensive, and need to be measured, and often aren't. So you have to make sure that if you're going to go to events, you invest in the right people to run them, and then the right effort to train them. I had some event staff teams that's all they did. And we got so good at it. It was not disruptive. It was effective. But it was a certain kind of marketing person that could run an event too. Because it's all that, it's like, like Paul Stamoulis, he can coordinate 9 million different things at once, right? You need someone that can do that and likes people and
is that a shot at me? Did you have to like people?
I got one last story, right? So I was at this company, Molly Pastor, who's now like a VP at Navigant Credit Union in Rhode Island. She was part of her job. She did a million things, was basically our event coordinator lead, and I would go to the show. She didn't often go, but she set everything up. And I got to a show once. Of course, it's like 10 o'clock on a Sunday. We're setting up the night before. And I'm like, I started I'm like, where's the utility knife? And where's the screwdriver, right? And of course, I opened the toolbox that Molly sent. And right there is the screwdriver and the utility knife, a little note, for Tom. And in there was a snack. And I think it was like a nip of Jameson's.
Was it? Oh, little Snickers. Listen, you got yourself. Get out yourself.
Molly, you're the best. Yeah, she was the best. She thought about everything.
So you really needed those the utility knife and screwdriver. That was a big part of setting up.
Dude, when you're,
eyeballs like, oh, how did you not know?
I don't have a screwdriver, right? And now, if the union guy walks by and sees you, I've got a screwdriver out. So I had to be, suddenly it's like, hey, you can't screw something in yourself. It's like, oh no, now I got to get a union guy. It's going to be 3 hours to screw one little nut on the side of this.
We love union people.
Absolutely. All right, let's change that. Hey, Peter, let's take just one more look at the one of the images here, which I think is, I don't know. Yeah. I just love the look. He got my look there.
He keeps on, and correctly so, but he keeps on adding chins to me. He just keeps on adding the chins.
You were so fit in the first.
I know.
And now you got a little chin. So,
but the funny thing is, we should call out that there is a lot of callbacks here. But one of the big ones is the machine, like that. The booth is from the episode where we talk about the person, unethical, the ethics of business, and making a 5-star, doing his own 5-star reviews for the what was it? What machine was it? Was a coffee maker?
Yeah, the espresso machine.
The espresso machine. So we do a little callback here to a little earlier episode. So these people are probably not talk to anybody because they're like, well, we're a pretty unethical company. We shouldn't talk to anybody about this stuff.
Yeah, I love that. I like this little nugget he's added too. Did I catch it? Yeah, the knowledge bomb. That was, I don't know. That just had a Mad Magazine feel to me or something. I love those little thing. So he keeps outdoing himself. Well
Yeah.
done.
By the way, I'm just looking at this. Could you just zoom into the right next to the Knowledge Bomb, the Gladiator booth? Is that guy giving the guy trying to talk to him a finger?
Yeah, I don't know if I can zoom in on this.
I know that guy looks like that guy's giving him a finger.
Oh, this one. It does.
That might not be a subtle callback saying like, yeah, these guys are not really caring about the customer or the prospects.
Got to look closely. You never know what you're going to find in here.
Yeah.
Chicken fat. All right. I think that's all I have to say
today. Yes. Good. Well, this is a good one. I know we talked about this. There's this. You've had a lot more experiences here than I, and you have some positive and negative. And again, I'm an old guy, so the conventions I've gone to were really there wasn't a lot of data sharing and the way that things are done today. It was old school, business cards, and just everybody started talking to just walking around talking to people, and didn't have the data that you have today. Everything was done in Bradstreet books. Like, oh, what's the name of your company? Oh, you have 3,000 employees. Great.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. You've only been to the couple. Yeah. I've hundreds. I can't imagine like the conferences, trade shows, events, the press events. I used to be the press spokesperson for a couple of companies. So I get sent to Vegas, no booth or be there for 3 days and then have to do a press tour, and, set up for the press junket and then have that beach down. So more marketing days for me there. But yeah, Vegas, like 3 days in Vegas is enough. And the 10 days, the 7 days, the 6 days, I'm like, God, it's just a grind. I don't want to go back to those days, but it was an adventure.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Tom. Another great podcast. Your bandwidth held up sometimes. That was great. The cartoon, I think, is fantastic. Hopefully, people go to graphicsalesstories.com. I'll get there. graphicsalesstories.com and look at all the cartoons. I think we're at 11 now. 11 or 12. Yeah. So we got a bunch in there. It's great. And we're going to a second year here, 2025. We have a lot more. So keep on listening. Keep on reading.
Yeah. Come back. All right. Thanks. And over and out.